Hi everyone, and welcome to another of Ian's interviews. Today we've got another interview with a Qualcomm executive. Miguel Nunes is the Senior Director for Product Management around Qualcomm's ACPC division. So I'm going to ask him a bunch of questions about where ACPC is going. And as you know, I like talking about Nuvia, so we're also going to ask a few Nuvia questions. If you've not seen my interview with Qualcomm's Alex Katuzian, I'll stick a card up here. There's also a written version on Nantech. But today with Miguel, it goes into some really interesting things. So for completeness, I will mention that this interview, the camera was just pointing at Miguel. I mean, he's the guy you really want to see, right? And we did this inside Qualcomm's sort of press area at their tech summit in December 2021. What's your minimum specification? My first question, I think, is one that's quite personal to me because I've been waiting for it for so long. Mm-hmm. We've finally got the announcement that 64-bit emulation, x86 emulation, is coming to everything 8 Gen 1 and above, or 7C and above, running Windows 11.
Yes.
Can I ask, A, why it's taken so long? I know it's hard, but why is it taking so long? And B, what's the reason behind locking it into Windows 11 versus, because you did have some previews with Windows 10.
Sure. It took a bit of time to get right. And one thing we've seen going through a lot of these application journeys is there's a lot of badly written software out there. I mean, there is. It's got nothing to do with the architecture. It's just the software is horribly written.
Sorry, I'm guilty for some of that.
Okay. It's just, and so we just the amount of issues you run to is not stuff you would expect. It's just strange stuff pops up that you just would have needed to work through. And we just needed to make sure stuff.
Are you talking like instruction flow, not really mapping properly to the
some of that, or even just, you'll probably understand what I mean. Like half the stuff we saw was installer bugs doing if machine type checks.
Right. Yes.
And so the stuff like croaks or the driver doesn't unload because it's trying to put it in the x86 directory. I mean, just little like things like that caused problems. And it should work, but it doesn't because it's in the wrong place. The DLL's unloading, just like stuff like that.
Sure.
And we took a while to get there. In terms of instruction optimizations, I think there are some that aren't super optimized, but that wasn't the majority of the issues. The majority of issues are mostly just loading issues,
CPU detection,
CPU detections, and there's a lot of software out there that uses libraries they get from somewhere else.
Yep.
Those libraries aren't doing the right thing, so it's just a linked problem.
Right.
And it took a bunch of time to get that stuff ported. So you'll see a bunch of open source stuff ported as well. And so it just took time to get that stuff.
So it's not necessarily an instruction translation issue. No. It was dealing above that at the OS layer.
Yes.
Okay.
Stuff we wouldn't expect, but it's a legacy ecosystem that hasn't changed. So nobody's had a problem.
Compared to some other x86 translation models by your competitors who own their own ecosystem. That's right. Sign the software, don't necessarily have those issues. Okay,
Exactly. And then your second question, why Windows 11? Not our decision. There's nothing technical.
Okay.
It's purely...
It's next generation of hardware. It's all Windows 11, so let's have that as the starting point.
Yeah. It wasn't a blocking decision. You're right, because if you think about the previous all in Windows 10.
Yep. Yeah.
So... that was a Microsoft decision where it lands.
Okay. So I know you guys this year aren't saying much about Nuvia.
Yeah.
Acquisition you did a little while ago there now. And back then you said 2022 sampling silicon for a 23 product. And you reiterated that at the Investor Day only 2 or 3 weeks ago now. So everything's still on course.
Yes.
Just to clarify for me, is Nuvia working on a specific core, or is it SoC level, minus like the GPU and the connectivity and stuff?
It's a good question, because I know if everyone thinks Nuvia chip, well, No, there's a lot more of a chip than what Nuvia had.
Yeah.
They're mainly the CPU core.
Okay.
They're mainly the CPU core. They use fabric around it as usual, how it glues together, how memory is optimized and stuff around that. So think of it more on the CPU performance subsystem.
Okay.
GPU, we've got GPU assets. We're making a lot of changes there too.
Yeah.
So on the GPU side, making it more PC friendly.
Yeah.
And then we are scaling the other stuff on AI and things like that too. And so it's Nuvia is a part of the solution, but there's other stuff there.
Traditionally, Qualcomm's gone with what ARM used to call big little or big medium little, however you want to, hybrid design. Yes. It sounds to me that Nuvia is solely working on that high performance core. Mm-hmm. Can you expand if they're doing an equivalent efficiency core to go with it? Or should we expect that to be something Kryo? I think you kind of get what I'm going with that question, but yeah.
We will have two core structures.
Okay.
That will be similar. We really believe that the performance and the efficiency optimized work.
Yep.
And we see that in our long bandwidth because a lot of the workloads don't need that Perf.
Yep.
And so you will see that structure still in place.
Yeah.
What exactly we do, which for, TBD.
Okay.
But you will see a similar structure.
Yeah.
You won't see just a bunch of big cores.
And the goal with the Nuvia is to scale from sort of 7C class all the way up.
Well, eventually we want to use it across the board.
Okay.
We want to use, this technology scales really well. I think as Cristiano and others mentioned, our focus primarily is going to be after the higher performance computing first, but our roadmap will scale.
Yeah.
And and the other thing you will see us try to do, which we've been trying for a while in this industry, is accelerate. Because this industry is a little bit slower, as you know, than the mobile industry. So how do we accelerate the pace of innovation and how do we accelerate that growth? So you'll see some activity there as well so that we can really drive innovation fast.
In the Investor Day, it was quite poignant that on the slide it said Nuvia team.
Oh.
Right. So should we think the Nuvia team as a separate design house internally compared to, say, Kryo and Adreno? I'm wondering to what level they're integrated into the company. Because last I heard, they were still in the same offices they were when they were a startup.
Yeah, I think a lot of that, by the way, is just cool in terms of offices and things like that. No, they're part of the company. They're part of the team. I see them as our CPU team.
Okay.
And we have different teams.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say. Some teams in this location will work on this core, some on this core. Yeah. But at the end of the day, they're part of the team. They're just part of Qualcomm. They're not a separate team.
Yeah.
They're just part of our CPU team.
In terms of internal roadmaps, obviously the big focus with Nuvia is this first laptop-focused chip in 2023. But usually when we speak to companies, especially of the size that Qualcomm is, we have 3-5-year roadmaps and 7-year exploratory roadmaps.
Yeah.
Is that all on the cards with the Nuvia team?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we're looking how do we scale the capabilities way into the future. You want to see our long-term roadmap?
Yes, please.
No, for sure. It's something we want to leverage as much. The technology is great.
Yeah.
We've got the performance, we've got the efficiency, we've got so much of the IP that we feel pretty good. And you probably gathered that from our analyst day, and we feel pretty good that we can build really awesome things. So,
one question that has come up, which I think is relevant given what Apple's doing in the space. And I know a lot of the senior staff at Nuvia were the guys who actually were behind that chip. But because Qualcomm is focused on this Windows on Snapdragon ecosystem, do you see the competitor for that sort of product to be Apple, because both the chips are ARM-based, or Intel, because with Intel, you're both using Windows as the main operating system?
Oh, it's a really good question. I would honestly say both. And both in the sense that there's going to be within ecosystem competition. Look, some ecosystem is a Windows ecosystem, an ecosystem, Mac ecosystem. And it depends on the segment. I would say it's probably an interesting segment question, because if you look at certain segments, Windows is king of that segment, or the majority of that segment. And so for there, Intel is our competition.
Yeah.
And then for other segments, we can provide the same capabilities, if not better, than what Apple is doing, but with a different ecosystem. So it depends the lens you look at it through, but it's really both. And we're fairly agnostic. And honestly, if it's Windows or later if it's Chrome in that space, our value is independent of the operating system. There's a lot of work that goes into the operating system tuning and getting the product working well, which Microsoft spent a bunch of time doing. But our platform is independent of the US.
So at this event, you're announcing HCX Gen 3.
Yeah.
It's not meant to be a holdover until the Nuvia chip's ready, right?
No, not at all. I mean, it's, the way I would see it, and when you see the stuff we're talking about and the data we show, our HCX Gen 3 is a mainstream path.
Yeah.
So you'll see our comparisons are against, mainstream i5, which is really still the mainstream of the PC.
Yeah.
So that's where HCX Gen 3 is aimed at, and that's where we compete really, really well. You'll see the performance, you'll see the power, you'll see the AI story perform really well. And that's what we meant to do. Yeah. It was targeted. Targeted at the volume set. And our roadmap in the future takes us at a different level of performance. So it's just really different tiers. And we believe we have to keep the tiers going, because this market is a tiered market. Even our 70 plus, with the stuff we're doing there, is really keeping that good, better, best model going and bringing value to the entry tiers. It's super interesting, actually. The entry tiers evolved so much over the past 24 months, more than I think anybody expected. And so there's a lot of value there too. So we will continue to do, I would say, the good, better, best, the low, mid, and high type products.
One of the things that has interested me is that you guys play a lot in this ultra thin, ultra portable. It's called an AC PC, but it's ultra portable with additional connectivity.
Yes.
In a traditional sense. What's the scope for going beyond that? Because, currently we see ultra portable as like that 15, 28, maybe up to 28 watts.
Yeah.
But then the laptop space also expands to 45, 65. You guys have got Adreno IP that you keep saying scales.
Yeah.
Does it scale to something bigger?
It's an interesting question. This wattage thing, the way it drives me crazy, because it's, what are you comparing? It's wattage. People, TDPs are a little bit mysterious. Depends how you measure TDPs.
Sure.
But we will deliver performance, this higher level TDP performance at a lower TDP. So even you'll see today when we will show you i5 level performance, which is at a 22 watt TDP. We deliver it at nothing.
Okay.
So we'll deliver Perf at a TDP. And honestly, to tell you the truth, we can still pretty high. It's what the market wants and what products we need.
Okay.
But we want to compete in the mobility piece is important to us, right? So, we are not focused on desktops today, things like that. But if the market sees value and our products are good in that market, it's something we definitely look at. But we focus on really the mobile market, but with a much higher level of performance at a lower GDP.
So just for my personal edification, when you say, 22 watts performance at 9 watts, that's great. I just want that same efficiency at 22 watts. So then you have you
want higher power at the same TDP, which will be, it's again, it's a good question. Very few people understand that.
Yeah.
it's going to be an OEM design functions.
Right.
And it's interesting where, like, do you want to build a thinner form factor or do you want a higher perf in the same? And I think there's probably a combination of both. But we will scale fairly well.
Yeah.
Fairly well, but still at a significant lower TDP than what you would get with others. Significantly. So then the question is like, I'm a big fanless believer, and so I like fanless, but we could scale, technology scale. So it's really where do the products, the right design for something.
So I'm coming to this event that you're holding with this. I'll just show it in front of camera.
Yes.
This is the Intel flagship Evo design, 1195 G7.
Okay.
On the plane gives me 16 hours battery life, which I know is still 6 less than what Qualcomm provided 3 years ago. But it runs all my software neatly. Yeah. At what point does Qualcomm design out? Because you guys already have reference designs. At what point do you spec out with your partners an equivalent to the Intel Evo ecosystem, ensuring that all designs meet very specific certification and driver support over 12, 24 months, ensuring that performance is still high? Is there scope for that sort of platform in your ecosystem, given, I guess, not to be blunt, but market share? And
we don't. It's interesting. We actually believe, we believe that every product should be optimized. And that's where we at with. And when we work with our partners, we really push that aggressive. It's like every product is optimized to best capabilities. And you'll see even today we'll talk about security. Like we're throwing a bunch of security features in there, and we don't want a vPro brand. We don't want a different thing. Everybody should get it. Why shouldn't you as a consumer get best security? So we don't want to go create a bunch of sub brands and confusion in the market. We want every product to be a highly optimized product.
So just look for the Snapdragon logo.
So the Snapdragon logo, and you get security, and you get like power efficiency. It's a good question. Maybe it's a scale thing. We can do it now because we are working with a smaller number of designs. Reality, we can do it, but we just want to get to a point where we don't see we don't see a lot of the software is so highly optimized. We don't see a lot of product variance that's outside of component selection.
Right. Yeah, I've got a few choice words for some of your partners on that.
Yeah. Because it's not like getting in the x86 world. When you design these type of things, cooling is a big deal.
Yeah.
Because this thing's going to throttle if you don't.
Yeah.
It's less an issue for us. So once we have a good system design, it's easier for people to follow. And then it comes more down to component choices. You're picking the right displays, not power hungry, stuff like that.
So I noticed you've got an 8CX Gen 3 beside you. Is that the Qualcomm reference design, or is that partner design?
It's our reference
design. So what's so special about it? I can't see it.
What's that? Oh, it's just, it's actually what we used to develop. It's a real thing. It's a real PC. It's it's a real form factor. It's usable. I use it as my device. So it's a real thing.
So it's a dev platform, not a reference design.
It's a dev platform / reference design. For us to dev, we have a bunch of connectors that connect to and stuff like that. But it's as close to a real product as possible.
I love that red. I once saw an MSI in that red color.
Snapdragon red. That's why we had it made.
Do you mind me asking who your OEM partner with that is?
Actually, we built this directly with an ODM.
Like an ECS or somebody.
Yeah, we used one of the more mainstream videos.
Okay.
But it's an ODM. It's not OEM it's a quality. It's an ODM design.
Okay.
We designed it and they just manufactured it, of course.
And you've got 2 cameras at the top?
Yes, and you'll see other demos with other cameras in the demo.
Fantastic.
A lot of interesting things. I did follow up. I did follow up on your audio question.
Which one's that?
Noise cancellation, can I post-process a file?
Yes.
And I think we can. So you'll actually see in the demo today,
Oh, perfect.
See it, and we'll figure out, guys, to look at, can we post-process? And we actually can.
It's for everybody listening, this is a question I put to these guys in our briefings, because I use RTX voice on the videos when I'm recording at home. But if I record out in the field, there's no RTX voice-like post-processing software that I can just drag a file into. So I was like, you guys, can you do it?
Yeah, we should. Yeah.
Which that's actually a good point that brings me on to some of the AI stuff, because you guys heavily promote AI, especially with smartphones. But one of the big uses of a smartphone is camera.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that goes into that. When it comes to the laptop design, your competitors have a problem with this in that there aren't that many applications that they can focus on when they talk about AI, and they start clutching at straws to promote the AI, but they end up optimizing software that nobody uses directly. So how are you approaching the messaging and the application as it comes to AC/PC AI?
Yeah, you will see, we'll have somebody on stage today with us, Microsoft on stage with us. And you will see them talk about AI and some of the things they're doing. We see just significant productivity use cases. If you just think about all the stuff that's happening in cloud, Office 365 has a bunch of stuff. Like, there's a lot of AI processing in cloud. You want to bring that closer to the edge.
Right.
And so a lot of productivity things, a lot of things in Teams, quite a bit. And, you know, a lot of it's centered around camera, but it's not for pictures.
Yeah.
It's for taking the camera inputs and using it for things.
Right.
And so you'll see a lot of innovation around that. And, you know, the processing power you need to run that stuff is very high. In our Gen 3, we have like 29 TOPS of AI. It's just massive amounts of AI performance, and we will use it all.
Is that CPU, GPU plus Hexagon?
Yes.
All combined together? Yes. And do you actually have software that can use all three simultaneously, or are you relying on three separate applications using it?
It depends. It depends on the software.
Yeah.
There's software that could go across them. And then some software, it makes sense to use one versus the other. Mm-hmm. But you could go across them if you wanted to. So
could I argue that you're focusing a lot on corporate use case for AI acceleration first, because that's been your major market to date?
Correct. Yeah. And I think that's where we all relate to, because we've been using these things so much for Teams and Zooms and things like that, that there's just so much stuff you can do to make those experiences better. Resolution cleanups. I mean, there's so many things you can do.
Video upscaling. So you can just transmit 240p and it upscales to 1080.
Lots of things like that. Clean the background lights.
Yeah.
Cameras on these things aren't great. Make it look better. So a lot of different things are in that. And we've got a big focus on camera too. Cameras have become super important in PCs all of a sudden. So a lot of work on camera, audio. And so, yeah, you know, it's a lot of use cases tied to productivity. So it's not just one thing.
Please mandate a minimum 1080p 60 in every Snapdragon laptop.
Oh, I wish I could. I would like to go higher than that. But yes.
I noticed you've got an ACX Gen 3 one you your little...
Of course.
So I do have to ask, because we've seen companies do different things. This actually looks like the silicon. That's what it looks like on the back. Whereas the ACX Gen 1 that you guys were showing, because I have to admit, some of your competitors have done this, presented these sorts of things, and it's just a package.
Yeah. By the way, this is a real one.
This is a real one. This is just a package. And because if say an 8 Gen 1, this got into the hands of a competitor and it actually had silicon in it, that wouldn't be a good thing. So just to clarify, but yeah, what can you give us die size, transistor counts? No. Or will I have to find out later today?
You'll have to find out later. You'll have to find out.
That's awesome. So with regards to what you guys are announcing today, what do you think will fly under the radar that people should actually focus on? You know, because you've got a lot of announcements, there's a lot of things to talk about.
Yeah.
But what might fly under the radar?
That's a good question. You know, there are certain things we're doing to camera, audio, where people have it today, but it's not great. And it could be so much better. And the enhancements we're making is really going to make it so much better. It's not new per se, but it's significantly better than what you have, and it's possible. And those experiences, and I think a lot of those experiences are just becoming closer and closer to your phone.
Does that still rely on OEM buy-in to those features?
Said much.
Okay. Because I know the smartphone, it's a bit of a different market. Yeah. Everybody has to buy in certain features to get them.
Not that much. In fact, one of the things we want to do, and back to your Evo question, is just make sure that some of the stuff is everywhere.
Yeah.
Just basic capabilities. Everybody should get it. It's not optional. It's just in your product. And everybody should have great audio, and we will work to make sure that those features are there. And even cameras, an example, we're working with the sensor ecosystem to make sure that the PCOMs have access to sensors that are actually better than 720p. Mm-hmm. And so there's a whole enablement piece, go make those things just standard. So every device is going to have a great experience, not just, the ones OEMs that choose to do that.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
If you like this content, please don't forget to like and subscribe. We also have now a private Discord server. And if you want access to that, become a Patreon member and it'll instantly add you as long as your emails are linked. You can join the Patreon for as little as $1.50 a month, and it all goes back into helping the channel. Thank you for your support.